Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Cuz You Don't Know Football. Listen, we got another exciting week in the books. Another exciting week. This was crazy. There's some crazy stuff happened, and it was so much happened last week that the topics that I was going to talk about, I decided, you know what, let's hold off on it and really go in because there was a lot of stuff in these games. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So this was a pretty easy week. And I just say this? This is the first month that we've had together. It was just us all month. And it was a great month. And we had a lot of highs and views and likes and follows. Man, it was incredible. So I once again thank all of you for being a part of this journey. And very excited about what's going to happen next. So let's just start with these games last week. All right, I'm gonna give a little shout out, just a little shout out to the fact that my Colts beat the Patriots. It was an ugly game, but I would prefer to win an ugly game than lose an ugly game. You beat them 10-6. No, I'm not going into any stats about that. I just want to say the one thing that I heard though is this might be the end of Bill Belichick. And I think it would be ironic and it would be beautiful that his tenure as the head coach of New England Patriots was decided to a loss to the Indianapolis Colts. Because, he did a lot, and there was a lot, and Spygate happened, a lot of cheating and scandals and, stuff that didn't really make sense. So if this happened, now you can see, who he is. And I'm glad everybody can kind of see what I already saw, which is Bill Belichick is not the greatest head coach of all time. Okay. He's a great head coach. He's a great head coach. There's better ones than him. Okay. And I think, and I'm cautiously saying it might be more than one, but we'll say anything like that. But the real good game, one of the good games, the Browns in a comeback beat the Baltimore Ravens 33-31. Now, this was the best game that I've seen Deshaun Watson play as a member of the Cleveland Browns. This was a great game. We'll start with the Ravens stats. Lamar was 13-23 for 223 yards, one touchdown, two picks. He also led them in rushing with 8 carries for 41 yards. But what's this man's name? Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell had a touchdown, and so did Gus Edwards. And Zay Flowers led them in receiving with 5 receptions for 73 yards. Deshaun Watson was 20-34 for 213 yards, one touchdown, and one pick. Jerome Ford had 17 carries for 107 yards. He balled out, and Kareem Hunt had a touchdown. Amari Cooper led them with 6 receptions for 98 yards. Let me say this. This was the most impressed that I've been with the Cleveland Browns in a very long time. It took real like gumph, that was guts to come back on a team that blew you out, a division rival that blew you out and was up 24-3. The comeback and win this game to me showed a lot, and it shows a different way that they can win. They won in a shootout. 33-31 is a shootout, so they're winning that kind of game. So now after watching this, I hope they don't let me down. I'm glad that I put them in the playoffs last when I did the final playoff predictions. I'm glad I put them in the playoffs. Hopefully they don't let me down. But but I can see them now. So the next time we do our power rankings, I'm going to look up and we're going to look at them. But Cleveland is this is more about Cleveland to me than Baltimore, because Cleveland had to rise up. Now, if they played again, I do firmly believe that Baltimore would win, like if they saw each other in the playoffs. But this says a lot about Cleveland, man, and they should be proud of this win. It was the most impressive one that they've had all year. So, moving on, the San Francisco 49ers whooped up on the Jacksonville Jaguars. and they ended up winning 34-3. So San Fran coming into this game was supposed to be desperate because they lost 3 straight games. It was to be desperate and coming off a bye. Um, I, even when I said that in last week, I didn't think they would be on 34-3, but I saw the victory coming. You can kind of see this a mile away. Yes, coming off of 3 straight losses, you are a hungry team and you are searching. And they beat up on a team that is a playoff team that has beaten good teams. Jacksonville has beaten good teams. So I never really moved. Well, let me get into the stats first. So Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence was 17-29 for 185 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 picks. Ouch. Travis Etienne never got off going well. 9 carries, 35 yards, no touchdowns there. Christian Kirk did have 6 receptions for 104 yards. Man, that's crazy. Like Christian Kirk had 104 yards. That means he had 80 yards to like everybody else. That's crazy. I mean, spread out against like 8 different receivers, that's like nothing. So that's here nor there. Let's look at the 49ers. Brock Purdy was 19-26 for 296 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. Christian McCaffrey had 16 carries for 95 yards. Deebo Samuel also in his return had a rushing touchdown. George Kittle had 3 receptions for 116 yards, 1 touchdown. Brandon Ayuk had a touchdown. Kyle Juszczyk had a touchdown. They also had 2 interceptions. So even on that 3-game skid, I never really lost faith in the 49ers. I knew they were going to be back. They're too good, when you look at what happened, like Deebo Samuel was hurt, like Trent Williams was hurt, the left tackle. They had a lot of injuries that really added up to what was going on and what was going wrong, and it was stars. So they were coming back. Yes, Brock Purdy shows you that he's not really a great quarterback, but I think this actually might work out better for the 49ers because they were forced to play a game that they didn't know if they could win or not. And they couldn't, they know that they couldn't play that game without all their stars, but they had to figure out how to win. And I always like a talented team that has to figure out how to win, as opposed to, just beating teams or, the schedule looks easy. So I actually think that's going to bode better for the 49ers in the future. Those 3 losses, and I think they're fine. Now, I will say this. Christian McCaffrey, like they've been doing a lot of stat padding for him. And I don't know why the NFL or teams like why this is like not getting more like they're clear like they didn't need for him to do that. Like he really only had 60 or 50 or 60 yards, and then they're just like giving like but they're up a lot. So like 30 to 35 yards of his yards came when it was like nothing. They meant nothing. So I don't know. Like he did it, that's what it is. But they're going to use games like this at the end of the year and say, well, he did this and he did this. And it really wasn't as impressive to me. I've been way more impressed with Christian McCaffrey before, but that's what that is. Yeah, that's cool with them. I'm good with them. One thing that I do want to say, the Vikings beat the Saints. First of all, the Saints are making my pick look terrible with picking them right now. Like, I don't know what's up with the Saints and why they seem to not be able to get it together. But I tell you what, Josh Downs has played like exactly how you would need him to play. He's only been there for a week or two, and he goes and he wins games, an NFL game. So like he shows his talent. I'm glad that he's getting this opportunity to showcase his talent. And a team that like is a French playoff team said we can still go to the playoffs with Josh Downs and excuse me, Josh Dobbs, excuse me. And I think he's exceeding. You know what I mean? He's exceeding expectations, and I think that's beautiful. Sorry, y'all, I needed it. I need something. You talk a lot. when you talk a lot, the back of your throat, it gets a little dry, and I needed to add some moisture to get keep things flowing. So you guys gonna have to pardon me. I'm not really going into the stats of this game, but shout out to Joshua Dobbs, man, and I hope you keep this up. Now this game I am gonna go into the Houston Texans. In my opinion, this is an upset. The Houston Texans beat the Cincinnati Bengals 30-27. Let's look at some stats. The Joe Burrow was 20 of 47 for 347 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Joe Mixon had 11 carries, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Jamar Chase had 5 receptions for 124 yards and a touchdown. Tyler Boyd also had 8 receptions for 117 yards. And Trenton Irwin had 2 receptions, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Like when you look at it, when you actually listen to it, like it doesn't sound like the Bengals lost. I don't know. That sounds interesting, but CJ Stroud was 23 of 39 for 356 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. Devin Singletary had 30 carries for 150 yards and a touchdown. Jeez Louise. And CJ Stroud also had a rushing touchdown. And Noah Brown led them in receiving with 7 receptions for 172 yards. But Tank Dell had the only touchdown from there. I was actually impressed with both teams in this game. Even though Cincinnati lost, we may not have saw it coming, but they didn't play a bad game. They played a good team, man. And I think at some point you're gonna have to look at the Houston Texans and say, listen, man, they're for real. They got a quarterback that's for real. I said that on the last episode. I apologize to the man. I apologize to the man. CJ Stroud is balling, man, and he is giving them hope. And he's taking this roster, this Houston Texans roster is going to be better in years to come. It's going to be better. So what he's doing with this is kind of I'm not saying they're a bad roster, but what I am saying is what they're going to be. This is the version that would be the bad roster. Yeah, I didn't see this coming in. And honestly, guys, we're gonna have to take the Houston Texans seriously. When you look at them, let's look at the rest of their schedule. Let's look at the rest of their schedule. Because now you really gotta have a conversation about them possibly being in the playoffs. And this is real now. The Houston Texans might be in the playoffs. So they got the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I will say, you can't look at them and just say, oh, now they're a team that just, chuck up the dubs here, chuck up the dubs. They're not that. But let's just take a look at it. They got the Cardinals next week. Then they're home against the Jaguars. Then they're home against the Broncos. Then they're home again. Oh, excuse me. Then they're in New York to play the Jets. Then they are in Tennessee to play the Titans. Then they're home to play the Browns. Then they're home to play the Texans, and then they finish up with the Colts. They could have 3, possibly 4 losses, but they're 5-4. That makes them 9-8. 9-8 to 10-7 and 9-8. That 10-7 could put them in the playoffs. 9-8, I don't know. 10-7 could put them in the playoffs. So this is a fringe playoff team that we're talking about here, and I think now it's time to give them the respect. They beat a team that we all looked at, that I looked at to be a scary team. They beat them. Okay, they went into their house and beat them, and I think it's just about that time to give them their respect. So shout out to CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, man. Shout out to them. Okay. This was another good one. So the Detroit Lions winning my NFC Championship pick. The Detroit Lions went in to San Diego and they won 41-38. Let's look. Justin Herbert was 27-40 for 323 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. Austin Eckler had 19 carries for 67 yards and a touchdown. Keenan Allen led them with 11 receptions for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Guyton had a touchdown, and so did Quentin Johnson. Keenan Allen, every once in a while, boy, he remind you, boy, it's a bad motherfucker. So Jared Goff, with the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff was 23 or 33 for 333 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. David Montgomery had 12 carries for 116 yards, 1 touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs had 14 carries for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 8 receptions for 156 yards and 1 touchdown. And I don't even know who this is. Brock Wright. I really don't even know who that is. Brock Wright had another touchdown. That's it, man. This was actually a very good game. It showed two teams that are trying to get into the playoffs and keep their position or solidify their position. And they just ran into each other. Somebody's got to lose, you know. I don't want to say that I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do with the Chargers. My gut says they're not a playoff team. I don't think they really have a legitimate. Let's look at their schedule. Do they even have a legitimate win this season? So they beat the Raiders, lost to the Chiefs, lost to the Jags, beat the Texans, beat the Browns. Okay, so they beat the Browns. That's definitely a good win. Beat the Broncos, lost to the Seahawks, beat the Falcons, lost to the Niners, lost to the Chiefs, beat the Cardinals, lost to the Raiders. They beat the Dolphins. Okay. They beat the Titans. They beat the Colts. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing. Let's do that again. Let's do that again. They lost to the Dolphins. Sorry. They lost to the Dolphins. They lost to the Titans. They beat the Raiders. They lost to the Cowboys. They lost to the Chiefs. They beat the Bears. They beat the Jets. They lost to so they really don't even have the Chargers don't have a legitimate win this whole year. They haven't beaten anybody. This is crazy. So let's look at their remaining schedule. They got the Packers, the Ravens, the Patriots, Broncos, Bills. They might squeeze in. They might squeeze into the playoffs. Only because their schedule really isn't that difficult. You don't know who Buffalo is. They got the Chiefs again, and they got some teams that they should beat, but they're the Chargers still, so don't bet on that. Yeah, like I said, shout out to Detroit. Keep trucking. I'm interested to see how they finish up this season, and where they rank up too. All right. Oh, so the Cardinals did beat. I'm not going over these stats. The Cardinals did beat the Falcons at home, 25-23. This was Kyler Murray's return from his injury, and he got a win. I'm happy to see Kyler back on the field, man. I hope he does great things. Very excited to see him and see more of him. I want to know what happens the rest of the year and what they will do if they don't win. Does Kyler coming back mean that they are going to win? Like, what does all this kind of mean? So, yeah, but for the week, shout out to Kyler Murray. All right, and now I'm just going briefly, and I'm not talking about it a long time. The Cowboys did spank the Giants 49-17. Y'all gonna go crazy over the Cowboys, and I can see that coming. You're gonna go crazy over Dak. You're gonna go crazy all over the Cowboys, and just like the Chargers, they don't have an impressive victory. There's nothing that they have done that is like they've beaten up bad teams real bad. They haven't beaten anybody, you know. Well, like I said, I do expect them to beat the Eagles the next go around, just because that's division games and everything like that. So usually it's usually a split, but they haven't beaten anybody. So you guys are just sitting here looking at this saying, being marveling, being impressed. Okay, yeah, blah blah blah. Let's see what happens when they play somebody because they got an overpaid quarterback, a overrated wide receiver, and they lack execution in key pivotal moments. So we'll see what happens with that. Another game that's just real quick. The Raiders did beat the Jets 16-12. You know, I'm gonna have to see my neighbors. I ain't seen my neighbors in a minute. They get a little ghost. But no, shout out again to Antonio Pierce, man. He's 2-0. He's 2-0 as a head coach in the NFL, man. And I think it's beautiful. I'm glad he got his shot. It's unfortunate that, you know, it had to come after Josh McDaniels bum ass, you know what I mean, had to mess everything up. But I'm happy for him, and I'm happy that he's gotten another win in the NFL. Now, this is something. Now, moving on, this is something that I don't think anybody really saw. This might be the upset of the week. The Denver Broncos. They go was it in? Yep, they go into Buffalo and beat the Bills 24-22. Let's just read some stats real quick. Josh Allen was 15-26 for 177 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. James Cook had 12 carries for 109 yards. But Latavius Murray had a touchdown, and Josh Allen also had a touchdown. And Gabe Davis led them with 56 yards receiving. Okay. For the Broncos, Russell Wilson was 24-29 for 193 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jamal Williams led them rushing, 21 carries for 79 yards. And Courtland Sutton led them with 8 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown. And Javonte Williams had the other touchdown. So I'm not even going into this about the Broncos because the story really isn't about the Broncos. This is about Buffalo. This is exactly what we've been talking about with Buffalo for like the last like 2 or 3 years. It's up and down. It's up and down. It's up and down. Like there's no consistency with this team, and it's out of control. They just fired Ken Dorsey as their offensive coordinator. We'll see what happens with that. Josh Allen looks at like. I just want to make sure I say this properly. The sum result of Josh Allen looks average. He's great, and then he's horrible. Like, he was horrible this game, you know, and then he's good, and then he's above average, you know, then he's great again, and then, you know, and we never can look at them and say, this is who they are. Can anybody give me an answer to who the Buffalo Bills are? Because I don't know what their identity is. Stefon Diggs really isn't even getting the ball anymore, which it's not that Stefon Diggs shouldn't get the ball. The offense should not be Stefon Diggs centric, as in to say we throw it to Stefon Diggs or that's all we can do. You know, that was incorrect, you know. And I think this is when they're trying to do something. I think this shows when they're trying to do something else, I don't really know what to say, but listen, I'm going to put this on notice. Listen, I'm going to put this on notice right now. Buffalo, you might miss the playoffs. Like, you got to get it together or you might miss the playoffs. I'll show you their let's look at their schedule. Their remaining schedule. The Bills' remaining schedule, so they lose to the Broncos. They have next week they're home against the Jets. They lost to the Jets the first time, so I do expect them to win that. But then they got to go to Philly, then go to Kansas City. Then they come back home for the Cowboys. Then they got to go to the Chargers, and then they finish up with at home against the Patriots, and then they got to go to Miami, and Miami probably is going to need that game too. Like there's legitimately 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a potential of 5 losses on their schedule right now. They can't lose 3. Let's just keep going. Let's look at the NFL playoff picture. Let's just keep going. Let's just look at the NFL playoff picture. So right now, Buffalo is the 10 seed. Right now, they're behind the Colts. They're behind the Bengals, who are also teams that are not in the playoffs right now. Behind the Texans, behind the Browns, behind the Steelers, who are somehow 6-3. I don't know how they got the 6-3, but they're 6-3. And and probably will not be catching the Dolphins for the division. Like Buffalo, man, like this is what I was saying was the problem with them. You don't know what team you're going to get. And with Josh Allen, you don't know what quarterback you're going to get from week to week. So they got to reel this in. It ain't looking good for them right now, though. It really is not looking good for them right now. But I digress, I digress. We'll see what happens with them. So that was week 10 in the books. A lot happened. I had to make some cuts. I had to talk about some things, but we're just going to jump, straight to week 11. Let's get to these picks of these difficult games. Let's see what's up. I do want to see the Cleveland schedule. Just what I thought. Okay. So let's look at these games for this week. All right. So the Bengals are going to Baltimore, and they got the Ravens, both teams coming off a loss. So that means one of them is going to be on a losing streak at the end of this game, which is going to be crazy. So earlier in the year, the Ravens beat the Bengals. And like I said, anytime that you beat a team, the second time you play them, usually it's the opposite. So for that reason, I'm going to pick the Cincinnati Bengals to beat the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. And let's see what happens there. Also in the same division. Remember can I say this at the beginning of this year, I told everybody, and it was like, that sounds crazy, that all 4 teams in the AFC North look like they could win or they could go to the playoffs. All 4 of them. Now all 4 of them aren't, but they all look like they could. And now you got the Steelers against the Browns. Now I will say this. I think last week when Cleveland beat the Ravens, it did establish. I think it's going to establish where they're going at this point. Add that to the Steelers did beat them earlier in the year. I think the Cleveland Browns going to win this game. All right, I think Cleveland's going to win this game. Let's get to another good game. Look, I just looked at the Bills. Jets. The Bills better not lose. The Bills better not lose. Okay. But honestly, the game of the week, you know where this is going. Eagles going to be in Kansas City and seeing them Chiefs. This is going to be a crazy game. And it's the rematch of the Super Bowl. Ooh, the Eagles are going to be interested to. Ooh. Honestly, I'm not too sure who's going to win this game. The Eagles or the Chiefs. I'm not 100% sure who's going to take this game. But I'm gonna roll with the Chiefs for the same reason. I think the Chiefs are a team that they beat you and they figure out how to beat you again. You know, and that's really at home. At home in Kansas City, I just think that's what we're looking at. So that's that. So, with that said, guys, we've wrapping up another episode of Cuz You Don't Know Football, man. This has been a great experience. I love having you guys here. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Please check us out on Spotify and YouTube for the full episodes. And check us out on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Facebook for the reels. The reels have been blowing up, man. I'm like really humbled by the success and how fast it's come. I really am humbled. Like I can't say enough about it. But just like any other week, unfortunately, I got to do y'all like I do y'all every week and tell you, cuz you don't know football. I'm your boy Reek. Like Martin said, I see you when I see you. Peace.